Hello, everybody. I thought I would go ahead and do a second part of my decomposition of Little Blue 2 video, and for today we're going to do a segment on the inverter cooking system. And essentially, how it works is this, okay? A lot of banners say you should use like propane or a butane cooking system, which is a gas cooking system that uses fire to cook. And while it does work, the reason I don't use it is because I like to stealth camp and cook in a city while I'm on the go. Okay, to cook with fire, you kind of have to sit there and monitor it. You cannot cook it while you're driving and whatnot. And by going with an electrical system through an inverter system, I'm able to cook while I'm driving. Now, what I'm going to show you today is actually not that system, but a simplified version of the system that can be done pretty much by anyone in a few minutes. And the first thing you're going to need is, of course, a vehicle with a nice battery, okay? In this case, it's just a standard lead-acid battery for my vehicle. And I have a 350 watt inverter. This thing's like 20 years old, I think. Well, maybe more like 15 years old or so. And you can buy these inverters, something this size. When I say size, I'm talking about the watt rating on it. You're going to want something, I would say at least 350 watts for a small little system like this vehicle for cooking. In general usage, I would recommend 350 to 750 watts. This 350 watt unit that you see here is not the main unit, it is my backup unit. But the reason I have it as a backup unit and I have it stored out here, see how it's not hooked up to anything, is so that I can still cook with my vehicle or generate electricity if my main system, which is hooked up to that, see that cable right there, that black cable, that's a homemade fuse that I made, and then it runs, the cable actually runs all the way down here underneath the vehicle into that switch right there that connects the whole, I don't know if you can see the switch here, let me show it to you. This is the switch, so that cable comes from that battery all the way down to here, up to the switch, throw the switch, like right on the top, but when I throw the switch, that battery and the battery that's back here on the other side over here, which is my house battery, become connected. And what that would allow is for the battery that's in here, which is my house battery, to be recharged by the system. And then that battery gets the cable, comes from this inverter right here, which is a 750 watt inverter, goes down there and pulls the power off the house battery to cook. And the reason this switch is important is that I can connect or disconnect the two battery systems whenever I want. And you're like, why would you do that? Well, when you're cooking, you're pulling power, electricity from the battery. And when you do that, the battery can go dead. And if you have the two batteries connected, like if this switch I've thrown like now, the two batteries are connected. That means if I pull power from that other battery, it'll pull power from this one too. And if that one cooks and runs out of power, then my car is also dead. This battery won't have any power. But it also works the other way. When I have the switch on and this battery is charging because the engine is running and the alternator right there is generating electricity to the battery, it'll send extra power to the other battery to charge that up as well. And typically when I cook, I have to have the battery charging because cooking uses a lot of electricity. But we're jumping a little bit too far ahead. So let's get back down to what we're talking about. A basic cooking system, if you want to do something like this, you want at least 350 watts because the smallest cookable or usable unit that I could see that could be done to cook food fairly fast. When I say fairly fast, I mean about 15 to 30 minutes to make a complete meal. That includes cooking rice and cooking some kind of meat dish to eat with the rice, okay? The rice cooker that I have, that I bought, and pretty much all the rice cookers that I've seen, the small ones, not the big ones, but the small ones, like this Rival one right here, or Walmart has one called Aroma. It's a tiny little one, and it makes, I think about 4 cups of rice, but it and that's enough to serve, I think, 3 people, maybe 4 people, depending on how much rice you eat. But that thing runs off 300 watts. And that's important to know because this unit right here generates up to 350 watts. So that means our rice cooker can run off this particular inverter. And if you want, one of those rice cookers, you just need to make sure that you get a unit that's 300 watts or higher. But to give yourself a little bit of leeway, I suggest 350 watts or higher. And how this thing works is this. You take the red, which is the positive. I'm making sure these connectors are tight. Make sure they don't touch each other because that would cause a short circuit. So, I don't want to have this plugged into anything right now. Okay, so I'm going to hold this in right here because I don't want it touching anything and actually completing a circuit yet. But I take the red side, which is the positive, and I connect it to the red side here, which is the positive. Okay. You move this out of the way. So red goes to red, and black goes to black. And when I connect this, it might spark a little. Okay, it didn't spark. Okay, so now my red is going to red and my black is going to black. What that means is this inverter right here can pull power from the battery into this. And see how I have a little switch here? There's a power light. When I flip the switch, it should come on. I don't know if you saw the light come on. See that? I'm going to turn it off. And the light goes off. See, it went a little dull there, a little dim. Turn it on, the light comes on. And right now this thing has 2 plugs. It has 2 outputs for 110 volts, alternating current. The vehicle generates through the battery system 12 volts DC, or that stands for direct current. Okay, and what we're going to do is convert the 12 volts to 110 volt alternating current. Oops, and it's running low, which means my battery here is pretty low. So I went ahead and shut the unit off, and I'm going to go ahead and unplug it for now because I don't want to drain my vehicle battery. I think my battery's low, maybe because it's old or whatever, but when we have the unit hooked up and turned on, we essentially have 110, 115 or 120 volt power like you would in a sticks and bricks house. And that means you can plug in 120 volt or 110 volt appliances to this plug. So it has a standard house plug and you can run them. So you can use any tools or anything that would allow you, that you would plug into a house AC plug, a house 120 volt or 110 to 120 volt plug. In our case, we would plug in the rice cooker, okay? But the thing is that I will warn you is if you plug in the rice cooker to this thing and you turn on that rice cooker and start cooking with your battery, you are going to drain this battery within a few minutes and then your vehicle won't start. And the reason for that is you're taking the power that's stored inside the battery, you're converting it to 120 volts, and you're using the 120 volts to go to the rice cooker to generate heat. That is using up all this power very fast, very rapidly. So what you need to do is you need to start your engine so that the alternator here, the alternator is like a little generator. It will generate electricity and charge up your house, not your house battery, but your vehicle battery. And then you'll pull the power from there to your inverter and use that to cook, okay? Which is actually very inefficient. But it allows you to cook with 120 volts. And that's why you see a lot of the other vanners keep harping on me and saying, you should use propane system or a, what is it? Not the propane, but the other gas, butane for cooking. Because then you don't have to do all this crazy stuff and you don't have to run your engine, okay? The problem, though, is then you have an open flame and you have to find a place where you can park and you can cook. You got to be able to get outside and cook, or you can cook in your vehicle. I would feel a little weird cooking inside a minivan with a butane or a propane system because it seems like too enclosed a space. I'm afraid of a fire. Basically, open flames scare me because they can easily catch on fire. But of course, heated electronics can also catch on fire. Anyhow, I prefer to use 120 volts. And the reason for that is I can also use the same cooking device like my rice cooker at a park or a hotel room, as you've seen in my videos. It's the exact same device. All I have to do is just plug it into the wall. And if you're in Florida like I am, a lot of the parks around here actually give you free access to 120 volts to use, You just don't want to look like you're camping there. You know, if you're there just once, you know, for one day or something, passing through, they usually don't give you a hard time. You just go there and you cook your food and then you just go on. Well, if you don't have that ability, you plug this in, hook it up, turn it on, you plug in your rice cooker and set it here on the ground or on a little table or something, and you let the food cook. You can cook your rice in it, and then you can also cook, take the rice out of the pot, then cook your meat in it. I usually recommend cooking the rice first because you can store the rice, cook the meat or whatever item you're going to eat with the rice, and then you can eat the two together. And that, in a nutshell, is a simple inverter cooking system. I think I showed some previous videos. Maybe I will do a full-blown video if there's a request, if you guys want to actually see it in action. I'll go ahead and show you that really simple setup. But all I do is basically I hook these two up, I turn this guy on, I plug in my rice cooker, cook my rice, cook my hamburger, cook my steak, cook my bacon, cook my egg, cook whatever I want to cook. You're essentially using the rice cooker as if it was like a stovetop with a pot on it. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put it in a comment and I'll go ahead and address it. As far as the inverter cooking system inside the vehicle, we're going to do that in a future video. Alright, for those of you who are not sure how I'm able to determine how much power I need for the wattage for the inverter, this is how I do it. The first thing you need to do is look at the appliance you want to use. Now, most cooking appliances require like 800 to 1200 to 1600 watts. Remember, my inverter that I have up at the front area there is only 350 watts. And the one back here is only, well, you can't see it back here, but the one back there in the main house battery system is only 750 watts. And how you determine how many watts something needs is you just look on it. Most American, at least, devices on the bottom or where the plug goes in, near where the plug goes in or on the bottom of it, it'll tell you how many watts it requires. In this case, this rival rice cooker unit runs off 120 volts AC. Do you see that? It says model RC61 rice cooker. Then it says 120 volts AC, 600 hertz, 300 watts. That's what we're looking at. It's at 300 watts. It says at 120 volts. When they say 120 volts, they're saying 110 to 120 volts. Some people say 115 volts. It's about the same. So when it says 120, don't worry about that. It'll work off the house plug like this. Even though our alternator, I mean not our alternator, but our inverter says it's generating 110 volts. It's strong enough to power this. It just might take a little bit longer to cook, just slightly longer. But this thing says 120 volts. You know, it's about, I don't know, they can't seem to agree. Like some people use 110, some use 115, some use 120, but they all work off the same plug, okay? So, and you don't really need to worry about that. What you want to look at is actually this, where it says 300 watts. That means the minimum that we need to generate to power this device is 300 watts. So our inverter under the hood of this vehicle can generate up to 350 watts. So it has enough power to run this rice cooker, and that's how I determine what to use. Now, when you shop for a device, if you want to do what I did and use electricity to cook, you have to look at the device you're going to use and see how much power it takes. In my experience, and from me shopping around and looking at everything, the lowest one I found is this rice cooker, which is 300 watts. Now, I have found crockpots. Crockpots use about 80 watts, maybe 120 watts, between 80 and 120 watts. And some of you are thinking, well, why not go with a crockpot? The reason I don't use a crockpot is a crockpot is meant to be a slow cooker. Okay, you're supposed to put the food in the crockpot and let it sit for hours, like a stew or something, to cook. And you can cook meat in it. It's just going to take hours to cook. Me, I don't want to wait hours to eat. I like to cook my food when I'm hungry and have it ready to eat in about 15 to 30 minutes. This rice cooker will automatically, with the pot in it and the lid on it, cook a bowl of rice, not a bowl, but a pot of rice in about 15 to 20 minutes. I can but I can fry an egg or cook ham or whatever in this pot here, using this bottom part as a hot plate. I can cook it in about 15 to 20 minutes. So within 30 to 40 minutes, I can have dinner or lunch nice and hot, ready to eat. If I had a crock pot, or a slow heating pot, that would take about 4 to 5 or 6 hours. Now, I could actually use this as a crock pot by, when you first plug this unit in, see, it doesn't even have an off switch. It has a cook mode, which is 300 watts, and it has a keep warm mode, which is probably about 40 to 80 watts. So if I leave it in the warm mode, I can heat things like soup up over time and let it sit and simmer and cook. Or when I want it high, just push down the button and it'll go up to 300 watts and use the full power. So that's why I recommend a rice cooker versus a crock pot. If you were going to use a crock pot, I wouldn't get a 120 volt one like this. It has this kind of plug. The reason is, whenever you have to convert electricity from like 12 volts to 120 volts or 110 volts or whatever like that, you lose a lot of energy. The conversion process wastes energy. So if you're going to use a crock pot, they actually make 12 volt crock pots that can plug right into this jack right here while you're driving. So if you're one of those people who drive all day long, like cross country, a crock pot that runs off 12 volts may be ideal. You put the food in there in the morning and you drive for a couple hours. By the time it's lunchtime, the food may be warm enough or hot enough that you can eat it. But if you're like me and you like to cook rice and you like to eat steaks and pork chops and eggs and fried rice, noodles, whatever, all the stuff that I cook with this, you need a real heating element. You need it to cook fast. So you wanted high-speed cooking, and most high-speed cooking devices like electronic frying pans and stuff, they require 800 to 1600 watts, which is too much. Now, people who have an RV or whatever, or a generator, they will generate 2000 or more watts with their inverter or their power system, and they can easily run those frying pans, those electronic frying pans or cooking pots or whatever, because if they're generating 2000 watts and they only need 800 or 1600 watts, they have room to spare. Me, in a small minivan, and for the kind of cooking I do, I only need 300 watts. So my system is very small and was designed to be small. And the house system, the house inverter can go up to 750 watts. So conceivably, I could run 2 of these rice cookers at the same time. That would only generate 600 watts. But whenever you're pulling that much power, you got to understand that a lot of electricity is flowing through the wiring. So you run the risk of your wiring melting and catching on fire. So I try not to do that too often. I try to just run one rice cooker at a time. Sometimes I'll have my laptop charging as well, so it might be pulling a total of close to 400 watts. But that still doesn't exceed what the minimum is, which is 300. Well, it might exceed the portable unit that's up under the hood, but my house unit goes up to 750, which means there's plenty of room to spare. So this rice cooker can cook with the 350 watt inverter with no problem. And I just wanted to clarify that. Remember, to find out how much power something needs, typically you look at where the plug goes in, there'll be a label, or underneath. And in this case, this rice cooker requires 300 watts. So our 350 watt inverter is more than powerful enough to run it. Just keep in mind though, you'll need to run your vehicle, when you have it hooked up, so that the battery doesn't drain. Otherwise, you're going to start to cook and it'll probably run out of power within 1 or 2 minutes, and then your vehicle won't start. So remember, run the engine while you're using the inverter. So until next time, everybody, I hope you found this video helpful, and you'll be able to cook your food if this is the system you decide to go with. I thought I had ended the video several times already, but I better show you this. You can see this little box that I constructed. I just used like this little pegboard type thing on the bottom there, and I didn't even do a very good job of constructing it, but I built a little box to hold it that's just slightly bigger than the rice cooker, and I put some elastic, what's the stuff called, bungee stuff, so that when I have the lid on, this can hold it shut. I put the bungee over like that, and on the other side, And then this unit I would set on the floor, or in my case there's a little stand right there from that drawer unit right there, so it can cook back there, and I have the steam blowing out this way. But you might even want to put Velcro or something on the bottom of this so it doesn't slide. And the reason we do all this is I'm typically cooking while I'm driving, and there's always the risk that you're going to crash. And what you don't want is to crash and have hot liquid or food or grease or oil or whatever fly out all over you and burn you. So there's always that danger, you know, cooking while you're driving. And truthfully, you probably shouldn't do that, but I do it. So to give me a little bit of safety, the lid, see how it doesn't come off? So if I'm in a crash, this will sort of hold everything down so that I don't have hot oil and food flying all over and burning me, in addition to being injured from the crash itself. And that's what we're trying to do, is keep injuries to reduce our risk of injury by securing the unit. So this unit goes back there and is actually pretty secure back there, so that if I get hit, which I had been in an accident, so I know how things fly around, this will hopefully hold it and keep it from flying up and burning me, because it can happen. So that's why I built the little holder. See how I set it here? I can still access with my finger here. I can access the switch and turn it on and off. Well, not on and off, but push it down to turn it on. So by doing that, the lid is held on so it doesn't fly up everywhere. And I thought that was worth pointing out, because if you want to build a system like this, you definitely don't want your rice cooker just sitting out where it could spill over or fly apart if somebody hits you. So keep safety in mind. Until next time, everybody, I hope this was informative if you're planning on using a system. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments. And, you know, as I can, I'll go ahead and answer them. Thank you.